Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Nightfall Terrors. I know many of you enjoy using these videos to help you fall asleep, so before you start to drift off, it would be great if you could leave a comment sharing where you're listening from around the world. If you're enjoying the episodes, don't forget to like and subscribe as well. Now, let's get cozy, settle in, and begin. Someone chased me in the woods. When I was around 16, I still lived at home with my family deep in the mountains, in our house that also served as a cottage. I often wandered through the woods nearby, but rarely ventured very far, mostly out of laziness or lack of curiosity. One evening I decided to grab a flashlight and walk deeper into the valley behind our property, going as far as I comfortably could. Since the area was known for its large population of deer, bears, and other wildlife, I also carried bear spray. After about 25 minutes of walking, maybe a bit longer, I began to feel uneasy, like I was exposed or not entirely alone. I tried to shake off the feeling, reminding myself that the forest was full of animals. It wasn't realistic to expect complete solitude. As I approached the creek that curved around our property, I noticed some trash scattered near the water. Pots, pans, a torn sleeping bag, and a pair of old shoes. It crossed my mind that someone might be camping nearby, but I didn't dwell on it. It was almost completely dark by then, so I decided it was time to head back. As I started my walk home, I kept glancing over my shoulder toward the creek, feeling increasingly uneasy. About 5 or 6 minutes into my return, in the pitch-black forest, I heard branches snapping behind me. My blood ran cold, and I felt my heart stop for a moment. I turned around, sweeping my flashlight in every direction, trying to spot any movement, maybe a deer, or worse, a bear. Seeing nothing, I continued walking. Barely a minute later, I heard rapid footsteps pounding toward me. I didn't even look back. I just ran as fast as I could. I think I even called out, begging whoever or whatever it was to stop. I was still a good 15 minutes away from home. I sprinted through the trees, doing my best to keep the flashlight pointed forward to avoid tripping. I kept bleeding and screaming, hoping it would scare off whatever was chasing me. But the footsteps only grew louder, accompanied by the sounds of branches snapping violently. I heard painful grunts and what sounded like aggressive growling. I cried out in fear, tears blurring my vision. It felt like whatever was behind me was so close it could grab me at any moment. Then, I heard a loud growl or scream, followed by the crashing sound of something falling. I didn't stop. I just kept sprinting, too terrified to look back. Finally, when I reached the boundary of our property, the noises stopped. Ahead of me, the lights from my house glowed through the trees. I turned around, hoping the nightmare was over. What I saw still haunts me. About 100 yards away, barely visible in my flashlight's beam, stood an unnaturally tall man. He wore a ragged hoodie and no pants. For a moment I stood frozen, unsure what to do. Just as I was about to make a run for it, he suddenly lunged toward me, sprinting wildly, almost like an animal, using the trees and ground to propel himself forward. I screamed, ducked under our fence, and dashed toward the house with everything I had left. By the time I reached the door, I was gasping for air, my throat raw, my knees aching. I shined my light back toward the woods and saw the man standing by the fence, waving at me. His towering figure loomed above the wooden posts. I rushed inside, locked all the doors, and woke my dad. I told him everything. I can't clearly remember what he did next, whether he called the police or simply kept watch. But to my knowledge, no one ever saw that man again. To this day, I refuse to walk into the woods alone, especially near dark, and I stay far away from the creek. I don't know if he's still out there somewhere, but I do know this. If he had caught me that night, I might not be here to tell this story. I just discovered my parents kidnapped me as a baby. Before I can explain what's happening now, I need to share what happened back then. This horrifying discovery has added new weight to one of the scariest memories from my childhood. All my life, I've felt watched. Some argue there's no scientific proof behind the sensation of being stared at, saying it's just a trick of the mind. As a child, I clung to that explanation whenever I sensed unseen eyes on me. But now, I know differently. In year 9, Miss Black briefly taught religious education at our school for just one lesson. She couldn't seem to stop staring at me for the entire 45 minutes. It wasn't just my imagination. My friends noticed it too. Her eyes remained fixed on me, even when I wasn't speaking. It made my skin crawl. One classmate asked, "Are you a Christian, miss?" Miss Black answered, still staring at me. "Religious persecution is part of human history, so I keep my beliefs private." Then she muttered a strange word. "Ripe." "What was that, miss?" someone else asked. But she ignored him and carried on teaching. We all heard the odd word, and my friends didn't let me forget it. They teased me for the rest of the day, making kissing noises and acting as if they were in love with me, just like Miss Black supposedly was. Odd as it was, I'm grateful for that teasing. I'm grateful they clung to me as we walked to the buses, joking around. Because if they hadn't been there to scream for help when Miss Black tried to shove me into her old Kia, Mr. Alden might not have reached me in time, and I might have disappeared forever. For years, I woke up sweating from nightmares about that day. How Mr. Alden had to physically pull Miss Black off me. I remember her fingers digging into the shoulders of my blazer. I remember the awful smell inside her car. Old food, spices, sweat, baked into the leather seats. I remember the scratchy blanket and stained pillow in the back seat, signs that she'd been living in her car. The thought of what she had planned for me haunted me. Miss Black was arrested, and my parents relocated us far away. Still, even after she was locked up, my fear only grew stronger. A doctor later prescribed antidepressants to help with my intense fear of being watched. Those pills dulled the fear, but they dulled every feeling, numbing me into an emotionless shell. Yet the sensation of being watched never left. It just stopped bothering me as much. Until this weekend, I came home from university to help Dad with some spring cleaning. It turned out to be more of a spring shuffling project, moving clutter to the loft because they didn't have the energy to sort it properly. Dad insisted I stick to my side of the attic. I'd never been allowed up there before, even as a kid, and now, even as an adult, I wasn't exactly welcome. Still, I promised to obey his rules. That seemed to ease his nerves. He even admitted he trusted me. Then came the second most terrifying moment of my life. While we were stacking boxes, Dad suddenly clutched his chest, his fingers twisting unnaturally. "Dad," I gasped. Weirdly, he seemed more worried about the boxes than his own health. He tried to push one particular box off the stack, but the entire pile, and Dad himself, collapsed onto the floor. I rushed to him shouting, "Mom, help!" Seconds later, Mom raced up the ladder. She screamed when she saw Dad lying half-conscious. She quickly called 999, then urged me, "Come on, Charlie, get out of the attic." I hesitated, looking at Dad. "What? Someone needs to stay with him. Charlie, I'm serious," she began. But the emergency operator's voice distracted her, and she started climbing down. Even though Dad needed help, my instincts told me something was off. He had knocked the boxes over deliberately. Mom didn't want me lingering in the attic. Something wasn't right. "Charlie," Dad croaked as I moved toward the box he tried to hide. "Stay still, Dad," I said. "Help is coming." "Don't," he gasped, but his words only made me more determined. I knelt by the dusty box, sealed weakly with old tape, and pulled it open. Inside were stacks of ancient-looking papers, stained orange and green with mold and mildew. The pages felt strange, rough, almost dangerous, like they could cut or cling to your skin. Reading the papers sickened me. Adam Darren, 10th of February, 2005. Blessed be. 11 pounds. Blessed be. Adam smiles for the crescent moon. He is ripe for a harvest. Blessed be. He shall end the world of men. He shall lead the chosen few. Blessed be. The date of birth jumped out at me. The 10th of February, 2005. My birthday. Dad's voice, raw with pain, pleaded, "Don't touch them, please." At the bottom of the box was an old Polaroid. It showed a group of people in a field under a pale moon. At the front, a smiling blonde couple cradled a newborn, swaddled in a blue towel. Standing nearby, smiling stiffly, were two people I instantly recognized, despite how much younger they looked. Mom and Dad. "Stop, Charlie," Dad begged as I turned the photo in my hands. "They'll have found us." Mom clambered back, up into the attic just as I confronted her. "What are these?" I demanded. "You touched them," she whispered, darting fearful glances at the attic window. I jabbed the photo with my finger. "Who is this baby? Why are you and Dad in this picture?" "We should have burned that box," Mom whimpered. "Maybe it's not too late." "No," Dad rasped, coughing violently. He grabbed her hand, ignoring her pleas to move him into a more comfortable position. "Don't destroy it," he said. "That would only make it worse. We have to run." "Are these my real parents?" I shouted, pointing at the Polaroid. "Am I Adam?" Mom wouldn't meet my eyes. That silence told me everything. As I clutched the photo, I could hear voices, not from the room, but from the picture itself. Cheerful, chanting voices. Yet their happiness filled me with dread. It felt as though something dark and ancient had reached out to claim me. Panicked, I dropped the photo and papers. My parents let out a breath of relief. But then, something made me move toward the attic window. Across the street stood a man in a parka. Just an ordinary man. Except he was staring directly at me. He mouthed a word. One I didn't need to lip read to understand. Ripe. He sprinted towards our house. Seconds later, a loud crash shook the front door. At that moment, all questions vanished. Only one thing mattered. Survival. Hearing the crash, Mom and Dad looked at each other and screamed in unison, "Run!" Terrified, I scrambled down the attic ladder, abandoning my sobbing parents. I raced into my old bedroom as footsteps pounded through the house. I flung the window open. A tree branch swayed just a few feet away. The man was coming upstairs. My heart hammered in my chest. With no time to hesitate, I jumped. I barely managed to catch the thick branch, swinging down to the ground like a clumsy monkey. Glancing up, I saw the man at the window, reaching for me. I ran without looking back, the sound of an approaching ambulance siren filling the air. For the past day, I've been riding buses from town to town, too terrified to stop. I haven't dared to contact my parents. But now that I've put distance between me and that cursed box, my mind is clearer. Yesterday, I only wanted to run. Today, I want answers. Who am I, and who or what is watching me? I used to toss my cigarettes into the marsh until I realized something lived there. I picked up smoking at 16. I stole 2 cigarettes my older brother had carelessly left on the dashboard of our car. In my mind, I could blame it on him for leaving them there. I didn't have a real reason to start smoking. I was just curious. Curiosity killed the cat after all. A week after finding them, I waited until the house was asleep, well past 11. I opened my window and climbed onto the back roof, which overlooked the marsh. I lit the cigarette with a candle match. Amusingly, I ended up lighting the filter instead of the tobacco, sitting there confused about why people enjoyed it so much. It tasted faintly burnt, and I couldn't even blow smoke out the way they did in movies. I crushed it out on the windowsill and tossed it into the marsh, too scared of my parents to find a better way to get rid of it. I watched the faint orange ember fade into the tall grass until it disappeared completely into the dark. Looking back, I realize how irresponsible that was. But back then, I was too self-centered to worry about animals or the risk of fire. All I cared about was avoiding trouble. When I smoked the second cigarette, I did it properly. It was already broken, so I snapped off the torn end and lit the paper that remained. This time, I had the filter between my lips, and suddenly, I understood why my family risked lung cancer daily. Holding it between my fingers, I felt unbelievably cool as I exhaled the smoke. The taste was more ashy than burnt, coating my teeth and throat. I can't exactly explain what made it appealing, but any smoker would tell you, you don't understand until you've tried it. I stubbed it out quickly since there wasn't much left to burn, but it was too late. I was hooked. I knew, as I tossed it into the marsh, that it wouldn't be the last, and I accepted that reality without hesitation. After every smoke break, I would brush my teeth thoroughly. It started with nighttime smoking, then shifted to evenings after school while my mother cooked dinner. Whenever I felt stressed, I needed a cigarette. I craved that familiar burn in my throat. I wasn't fully addicted yet, since my access was limited. I stole 1 or 2 cigarettes a week at first. Eventually, I started buying from classmates, but without a job, I could only afford a pack about once a month. Even as my habits evolved, my smoking spot stayed the same. I still perched on the rooftop, legs dangling, throwing the stubs as far into the marsh as I could. It became a little game, seeing how far I could throw it, or how long I could track the ember against the night sky. One night around 2 or 3 a.m., I was lying flat on my back on the roof, nearly done with a cigarette. As I tilted it up to exhale, it slipped and burned my face. I cursed, crushed it into the roof, and sat up angrily. That's when I caught something out of the corner of my eye. I turned and saw the outline of a tall man standing in the marsh. His body was disturbingly thin, head unnaturally large. He stared at me, arms hanging loosely at his sides. I almost fell off the roof. I scrambled back to the window, eyes squeezed shut, and clambered inside. Once in my room, I rushed to lock the window. I peeked out through the blinds, but he was gone. To this day, I'm unsure whether I actually saw someone. I was exhausted, and unless he somehow vanished into the mud or ran at incredible speed, I couldn't explain how he disappeared so quickly. That encounter scared me off smoking for about a week, but soon enough, I was back at it. Only now, I smoked at the park instead. My bedroom window stayed locked until the day I moved out. Sometimes, I thought I glimpsed him again in my peripheral vision, but I was always known to be a little paranoid. Now, I'm 28. I quit smoking last year when I found out I was pregnant with my daughter. My husband and I live in a high-rise apartment far away from my old home. We're on the top floor, no balconies or ledges for our daughter to sneak out onto one day. Quitting was one of the best decisions I've made. I save money for my little girl, and my anxiety has almost completely faded. Last week, I burned dinner. It wasn't a huge deal, but the kitchen filled with the smoke, so I slid open a window to let the air out. I dropped the glass of water I was holding, and it shattered across the floor. My husband rushed over to find me standing there, shocked, my hand covering my mouth. Sitting on the windowsill, 400 feet in the air, was a pile of burnt cigarette butts. Long blades of grass poked out of it, still caked in mud. I took a wrong turn and ended up exactly where I needed to be. Some roads seem to remember you better than people ever do. We were driving late into the night. It was just me, my girlfriend asleep beside me, and Havana, our 2.5-year-old dog, curled up on the passenger seat as if it belonged to her. The air was crisp, the sky empty of moonlight, the kind of night where the world feels like it shrinks to only your headlights and your thoughts. The GPS had rerouted us off the main highway to avoid a jam. I took the exit without thinking twice. But a few kilometers in, it started to feel like the road had chosen me instead. There was nothing special about it visually. Flat, straight, trees lined either side, and the kind of deep silence that seeps into your bones. Yet something about it pressed on a part of me I hadn't felt in years. A weight behind the ribs, a heaviness that wasn't just fatigue. That's when I saw him. A man standing at the roadside, not waving, not distressed, just there, calm and still. I slowed down, and as the headlights lit up his face, my breath caught. "Marco," he smiled. "Hey, Bedar." I pulled over, gravel crunching beneath the tires. Havana's ears perked up, but she didn't bark. She just watched him, like he was supposed to be there. I stepped out. Marco looked older, as did I, but his posture was unchanged, relaxed, yet aware. He always had a way of taking everything in without needing to comment. I hadn't seen him since we were about 11. He was never the loud kind of friend. We didn't climb trees or build forts or throw water balloons at the girls. We just talked, in corridors, on slow walks home after school. We found each other because neither of us liked pretending to enjoy what everyone else did. I never played with Ligo. He wasn't into soccer. We connected in the quiet spaces between everything else. This road, this exact one, was where we used to walk. After school, before the streetlights flickered on. It cut behind newer buildings and curved near an old train yard, long gone now. We'd sit on a cracked bench there, talking about things that felt too big for other places. where we'd be in 20 years if anyone would remember us, and what it meant to feel invisible, even in a crowd. Then one day, he disappeared. No warning, no goodbyes. He didn't move like kids normally do, with packed boxes and tearful farewells. He was just gone. Empty seat in class, no forwarding address. I asked about him once or twice, but there were no answers. Eventually, I let him slip away, and now here he was again, standing on this road like no time had passed. I never got to say goodbye, he said. His voice was the same, gentle, steady. He glanced down the road as if it was an old, familiar path. I didn't even know you'd left, I said. I know, he replied, but you remembered this road. I didn't mean to, but something inside you did. You came back when you needed to. That's what this place was always for. I didn't fully understand. Him, not yet, but he kept talking. You were the one who talked to me when no one else did. You let me be silent without making me feel wrong for it. You asked real questions. Back when my life was falling apart, you didn't know it. But you gave me a place where I felt safe. I turned away, swallowing hard against the lump in my throat. You carried something for me that I couldn't name back then, he said. Now, I'm here to help you carry yours. I let out a small laugh. Not because it was funny, but because I didn't know how to manage the ache inside me. I'm fine, I said, almost automatically. No, he said softly. You're functioning. He looked at me like I'd said something untrue about myself, seeing through the facade. You've been slowly unraveling, he continued. You show up. You do what's expected. You have conversations. But inside, you're exhausted, holding it together because you think you have to. No one notices. But I do. I stayed silent because he wasn't wrong. I'd been moving through life on autopilot, meeting deadlines, solving problems, smiling in meetings. But deep down, something vital had been draining away. That fear that everything might collapse. That fragile, brittle feeling just beneath every interaction and task. You've convinced everyone you're okay, he said. Even her. He nodded toward the car. But you're not. I felt the heat building behind my eyes. He shifted his gaze toward Havana. She knows, though, he said. She's your anchor. You think she's just a good dog, but she's more than that. She pulls you back from the fog, reminds you that there's still joy, even in the smallest moments. I looked at her through the window. She was watching me. Her tail tapped once, then stilled, as if she understood it all. You're stronger than you realize, he said. But being strong doesn't mean you don't need help. I don't know what to do, I admitted. You don't have to do anything tonight, he said. Just feel it. Let yourself stop pretending even for a little while. That's why I'm here. He looked back down the road, and for the first time, I noticed something. He didn't seem like someone visiting. He looked like someone coming home. You came because you knew I was close to breaking, I said. He nodded. This was our place. You were your true self here, before you learned to hide. I thought maybe if you came back, you'd remember how to come back to yourself. I took a step toward him, but he was already moving away. Not vanishing, not fading, just walking off into the darkness like someone leaving a room that wasn't meant for them anymore. I stood there until he was out of sight. Then I got back into the car. My girlfriend stirred, squeezing my hand, still half asleep. Havana leaned against my leg with that steady, wordless love that expects nothing. We drove on. The road didn't feel empty anymore. It felt quiet, real, solid. I don't know what Marco was. Memory, ghost, guardian. All I know is I needed him, and somehow he knew exactly where to find me. That's the thing about true friendship. Even when time and distance wear it away on the surface, something deeper holds on. A hidden map, a place. He came back to remind me that I wasn't alone, that I never truly had been. And sometimes saving someone doesn't mean grand gestures. Sometimes it's as simple as standing by the side of the road, right when the silence gets too heavy. The scariest spring break I ever had. I woke up feeling excited to kick off spring break. After taking the shower, having breakfast, brushing my teeth, and getting dressed, I decided to spend the day golfing and fishing. I headed to a golf course that also had a beautiful stream nearby. However, the moment I arrived, it mysteriously turned dark, as if night had fallen in an instant. To my shock, my golf club and fishing rod suddenly came to life. Frozen with fear, I stumbled backward. "Why are you scared of us?" the golf club asked. "We're just your golf club and fishing rod," they said in unison. "You can't be real," I stammered. "You don't even look realistic." As soon as I said it, I noticed their faces change. They became even more horrifying. Their eyes turned into glowing red dots, and blood dripped from their mouths. I wanted to run and find help, but the course was deserted. I found myself trapped with these eerie objects, tools I should have been using for a fun day, but now they seemed intent on harming me. Then they both began chanting, "Feed us. We're starving." I had no idea what to do. I thought about throwing them into the river, but fear kept me from getting close. They might have attacked me if I tried. Instead, I sprinted to a vending machine nearby, bought a chocolate bar, and offered it to them. "What is this?" they asked. "It's a chocolate bar," I said, urging them to try it, but they just stared at it. After realizing they weren't going to eat, I shrugged and ate the chocolate myself. "Weren't you going to eat it?" I asked. "No," they replied. "Bring us something real, an animal, perhaps." "You know what? Not happening," I said firmly. I then kicked down the gate and ran away as fast as I could. The next day, I had a packed schedule. Visit the zoo, explore the fossil museum, eat frozen yogurt, check out the planetarium, buy marshmallows. I was determined nothing would ruin it. At the zoo, I enjoyed seeing all the animals, but just as I was about to head to the museum, the golf club and fishing rod reappeared. Chaos broke out. People fled in terror, and tragically, some didn't make it. The animals were attacked, though not all were eaten. I saw a dead ostrich, a zebra, a caracara, a kookaburra, and even a capybara. Would they seriously follow me everywhere? Before I could react, it turned dark again. Then, unbelievably, the dead zoo animals and staff rose as zombies. Zombies. It's fun to read about zombies in books or watch movies like Night of the Zoopocalypse, but facing actual undead animals in real life was horrifying. They all began chasing me, led by the golf club and fishing rod. The following day, I visited the museum, admiring displays of dinosaurs like the ornithomimus and other extinct creatures. I was bracing myself for another sudden nightfall, but instead, a strange blue light engulfed the building. Then, fossils and dinosaur skeletons sprang to life. To my disbelief, the golf club was riding an ornithomimus, while the fishing rod rode a giant moa. I managed to outrun them and headed to the frozen yogurt shop. I ordered chocolate frozen yogurt topped with gummy worms. Just as I finished, they burst in, bringing the yogurt machines and toppings to life, causing the staff to flee. I had to run again. Next, I visited the planetarium. I admired the space exhibits, but naturally, after I left, the golf club and fishing rod arrived, animating the displays and sending everyone into a panic. After escaping, I made my way to buy marshmallows. I managed to purchase them just before they brought the rest of the store's marshmallows to life. I fled yet again. Eventually, I ran deep into the woods to catch my breath. I decided to camp out there until morning, when I wandered into the trees to use the bathroom. I was about to relieve myself when I heard something approaching. I quickly zipped up, only to find the golf club and fishing rod standing right in front of me. I was so shocked that I peed my pants, but honestly, that was better than being eaten. I mean, drowning in an ocean would be one thing, but being eaten by a golf course, people would be laughing at my funeral. I had nearly accepted my fate when I heard a hawk screech overhead. Instinctively, I mimicked the screech, and suddenly, everything returned to normal. The zoo animals were back where they belonged. The museum fossils and space exhibits were restored. The marshmallows and yogurt toppings were normal again. Most importantly, the golf club and fishing rod were just ordinary objects once more. I could finally enjoy my spring break. But here's a word of advice. If your golf club and fishing rod ever come to life, don't listen to them. A man watched me outside my hotel room. I think he was trying to get in. I was traveling alone for a work conference and had booked a room at a comfort inn near the convention center. Nothing special, just a clean, affordable option close by. The lobby smelled faintly of old coffee mixed with lemon-scented floor cleaner. The front desk clerk barely looked up when I arrived, simply sliding the keycard across the counter and mumbling, "Room 309, elevators to your left." The elevator ride was uneventful. No one else got on. When I reached the third floor, the silence immediately struck me. No sounds of TVs, no doors slamming, no muffled voices. Just a long hallway lined with patterned carpet and dim, buzzing yellow lights. My room, 309, was at the far end of the hallway, past rows of identical doors. As I rolled my suitcase along, I noticed something unusual. Near the stairwell door, at the very end of the corridor, a man was standing completely still, facing me, not moving, not speaking, just standing and staring. I slowed for a moment, unsure. Maybe he was waiting for someone. Maybe he was a guest locked out. I kept walking, doing my best not to make eye contact. When I reached my door and glanced back, the man silently turned and slipped into the stairwell. I brushed it off, told myself it didn't mean anything. Maybe he didn't want to make things awkward. Maybe he felt embarrassed. Inside, the room felt unusually still. There was a faint scent of old detergent, as if the carpets had been cleaned but not properly aired out. I noticed the desk chair had been turned to face the window, which struck me as odd. Housekeeping typically leaves it tucked in. I switched on the TV for background noise, tossed my bag onto the bed, and tried to settle in. The evening passed quietly. I ordered some food, ate on the bed, and flipped through TV channels. Every so often, I thought I heard faint footsteps in the hallway, soft and intermittent, always stopping when I muted the TV to listen. Around 1:50 a.m., the room phone rang. The sharp, old-fashioned ring cut through the quiet. I sat up quickly, startled. I picked up the receiver. Hello? Only static. A faint, crackling sound. Hello? I repeated louder. On the other end, I could hear steady breathing. No voice, just deliberate, audible breathing. Then a click. Deadline. I hung up, staring at the phone. It might have been a prank. Maybe a crossed wire. Old hotel systems aren't always reliable. I laid back down, facing the door. Maybe 20 minutes later there was a knock. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Not rushed, not playful. I sat up, listening. Another knock followed. Cautiously, I approached the door and peered through the peephole. The hallway was empty. No footsteps, no elevator sounds, no stairwell door moving. I stood there, holding my breath, for longer than I should have. Still nothing. I backed away and grabbed my cell phone, dialing the front desk. Comfort Inn, front desk, came the same clerk's voice. Someone knocked on my door, I said quietly, and someone called earlier. Room number 309. A short pause. Sir, external. Calls can't be connected directly to guest rooms, he said. Only internal ones. Another pause. Please stay in your room. I'll send security up. About 5 minutes later, I heard the faint ding of the elevator. Then slow, heavy footsteps approaching. There was a knock. Hotel security, sir. I checked through the peephole. A single staff member stood outside, middle-aged, wearing a black polo with the hotel logo and a radio clipped to his belt. I opened the door with the security chain still latched. He asked if I wanted him to check the hallway. I said yes. He walked slowly down the corridor, checking doors and peeking into the stairwell. He even inspected the emergency exit at the far end. When he returned, he shook his head. No one out here now. Could just be someone fooling around, he said. Happens sometimes late at night. Make sure you keep your deadbolt locked, he added. I already have, I replied. He nodded briefly and headed back toward the elevator. I watched until the doors closed behind him. I relocked everything and sat down on the bed again. I kept the TV muted. I wanted to hear if anything else happened. Around 3 p.m., I heard it again. The door handle shifting, slowly at first, then a bit more firmly, as if someone was testing if it was unlocked. I moved carefully to the peephole. It was blacked out. Something was covering it from the outside. I backed away quickly, heart racing. I grabbed the nearest chair, wedged it under the door handle, and ran to the room phone to call the front desk. Someone is at my door, I whispered urgently. Trying to get in. Stay inside. We're sending security up now, the clerk assured me. Less than 2 minutes later, I heard footsteps and another knock. Hotel security, sir. I looked carefully through the peephole. It was clear again. The same staff member stood outside. I opened the door slightly, keeping the chain fastened. I didn't see anyone in the hallway when I arrived, he said. Insisted they check the security cameras. He agreed and radioed the front desk. After a short exchange, he returned. The camera feed's down, he said. Some wiring problem. They're scheduled to fix it tomorrow. I stared at him, unsure what to say. I relocked the door, reinforced it with the chair again, and sat on the bed, fully awake. An hour passed, Around 4 a.m., it was clear I wasn't going to get any sleep. I decided to go sit in the lobby until morning. I grabbed my keycard, unlocked the door, and stepped into the hallway. It was completely silent. As I walked toward the elevator, I instinctively glanced down the opposite end of the hallway. The man was there, dressed entirely in black, standing motionless, staring directly at me. I froze. He took one step forward, then another, and then he broke into a full sprint, coming straight toward me. I ran. I visited an antique store a few days ago, and I strongly advise against buying anything from there. I may need to drive back soon and return what I purchased, once I'm feeling better. Maybe it's just the fever making me imagine things. Honestly, I'm not sure. Apologies if I'm rambling. I feel like I haven't truly slept in days, though all I've done is sleep and have nightmares. Or at least, I hope that's all they are. Let me back up and start from the beginning. 3 days ago, Roger and I took a trip out to the lake. It was a beautiful day for it. We stopped in a small village just before the state park, because I had heard about a bakery there that supposedly made giant eclairs. I think those eclairs are still out in the car, baking in the sun. As we were leaving the bakery, I spotted an antique store across the street. You couldn't miss it. The largest old house in the village, part of it now serving as a shop. I convinced Roger to go in by promising not to spend anything. That wasn't true, but he probably knew that. The front door was open, but we didn't see anyone at first, so we started browsing. The place was massive. Each room had its own theme. The dining room was full of china cabinets and tableware. The living room had furniture, books, old vinyl records. You get the idea. We spent a lot of time looking around. It felt like the contents of hundreds of estate sales, and none of it was junk. While Roger was flipping through old photo albums in a bedroom, I wandered off to a display case at the front of the shop to check out the jewelry. An older woman with long, graying blonde hair stood behind the counter. It almost felt like she had been waiting for me. As I went to greet her, a cat jumped onto a nearby chair and began rubbing against my hand. "Well, hello, handsome," I said. "How did you know his name?" she asked. I jumped a little. Her eyes were the most striking I'd ever seen. "Oh, is that really his name? I just thought he was handsome. He's such a sweet boy." Seriously, her irises looked like galaxies swirling inside them. She smiled. "He really is. It suits him perfectly," I told the cat. "So, what brings you out here?" she asked. "It's a small village." She clearly knew we were visitors. "We're heading to the beach," I said. "It's a perfect day for it," she replied. I agreed. Then she added, "I don't have any jewelry at the moment. It tends to sell quickly, and anything valuable I usually auction myself." I don't even remember asking her about jewelry. Maybe I did, but I don't think so. She continued, "But I overheard you mention brass figurines." She then lifted a vintage brass bell shaped like a Victorian-era woman in a bonnet and dress. "I believe this was made in England around the 1950s, she said. She rang it lightly and handed it to me. "Still works." As I was examining it, she brought out 3 brass owl figurines, small, medium, and large, and a little brass Labrador retriever. $20 for all of them, she said without hesitation. I pulled out a bill from my purse and handed it over. Would it be okay to leave them here while I finish browsing? "My husband might want some books," I asked. "Of course, I'll bag them up for you," Take your time, she said. I found Roger still in the bedroom, flipping through the same stack of albums. You're still looking at those? I asked. There are dozens of albums here, some going back to the 1800s, he said. Are they just old family albums? I asked. Yeah, it's weird, creepy. Are you thinking about buying any? No, he said, putting the album back. Are you ready to go? This place feels off, he said. I laughed, but deep down, I agreed. I just need to grab my bag, I said. What bag? He asked. As I left the bedroom, I nearly bumped into the woman. She was standing there holding the bag out to me. Safe trip back to the city, she said. I don't recall mentioning we were from the city. Maybe we just gave off that impression. Thank you. Lovely store you have here, I said. We practically bolted for the door. Once we were in the car, I showed Roger what I bought. I thought you said you weren't going to buy anything, he said. I wasn't planning to, but she said she overheard me talking about figurines but you never mentioned figurines. You said you weren't going to buy anything, he interrupted. He was right. I don't know, I stammered. Suddenly, Handsome the cat jumped onto the hood of our car. We both screamed. I had to carry him back to the store and set him just inside the door. After that, I didn't feel like going to the beach anymore. Roger didn't mind skipping it. I could sleep for days, he said. Me too, I agreed. And that's exactly what we did when we got home. We went straight to bed and have barely moved since. We both ended up missing work. I wonder if we caught something. Maybe from touching mouse droppings while rummaging through old items. It's possible. We both developed a fever and have been plagued by unsettling dreams. Roger keeps dreaming that he's trapped in that house's attic, surrounded by the people from those albums. I can tell he's genuinely shaken. I feel terrible. I wish I hadn't talked him into going inside. I wish I hadn't bought anything. Several times, Roger has bolted upright, screaming that it feels like something is pressing down on his chest, which is terrifying because I swear I felt something moving in the bed. Sometimes it feels like something is walking over me, like a cat. Roger doesn't hear it, but I keep hearing a bell ringing. The bag made it into the house, but the bell is missing. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Would it seem crazy to bring everything back? I don't even know what I'd say. I'm not looking for a refund. I just don't want them here. Maybe I can quietly leave them by the door. As soon as I'm feeling strong enough. Beneath the junk, my mother found a new god to worship. My mother was a hoarder. Not the kind buried under mountains of garbage like on TV, but enough that it changed her, and changed me too. She could still use the bathroom, cook around the clutter, even get the laundry and dishes done sometimes. But finding anything required digging through heaps of junk. Mice would scatter and roaches fled when the lights turned on. I'd worried about her ever since I left for college. Worried it would spiral out of control. I feared she might stack newspapers on the oven coils, flick a switch and start a fire. Maybe it's an only child thing to carry so much concern. With no siblings to check in and my father gone for a decade, she's all I have. I know something inside her fractured. Maybe it was my father's death or something even older. Whatever it was, it broke her. She'd always been messy, but after he died, it escalated beyond control. A few weeks ago, I tried to call for the first time in a while. An automated voice told me her service was disconnected. I thought about requesting a wellness check, calling the police. But deep down, I knew the cracks in her mind ran deeper than just hoarding. She could be unpredictable. Still, I figured she probably just blew her social security on lottery tickets and cigarettes again. Forgot to pay the phone bill. After a few restless days, I decided to act. I withdrew from classes, accepted the financial penalty, and booked a flight home. It wasn't just the dead phone. It was the excuse I needed for a conversation long overdue. When I arrived, I paid the taxi driver and watched him vanish down the road. Instantly, the state of my childhood home struck me. The grass was wildly overgrown. Milkweed brushed against my hips as it swayed. The rusted chain-link gate clattered in the breeze. The two-story home looked smaller than I remembered. Oddly, all the blinds were shut, yellowed and faded behind the grimy windows. Piles of magazines, still sealed in plastic, sat abandoned on the porch. Pink and yellow notices were taped to the door handle. I opened the mailbox, overstuffed with junk mail and overdue bills. "Mama, you haven't been keeping up, huh?" I muttered. The whole neighborhood seemed worse than I remembered. Maybe it was just the collapse of childhood innocence. But something in my gut twisted with dread. I rattled the front door handle. Locked. I rang the doorbell and waited. Nothing. I knew where she hid the spare key. Turning away, I made for the backyard. The street felt deserted. No familiar faces, just me and the low hum of a struggling suburb. I crossed beneath the carport, passing her dust-covered silver Honda. When was the last time she drove it? I found the fake rock hiding the spare key. I'd warned her it wasn't safe, but now I was grateful. The lock turned easily. I pushed inside and immediately gagged. The stench of rot slammed into me. Reflexively, I retched into the weeds. I feared the worst. I almost called 911, but forced myself to check first. Covering my nose with my shirt, I slipped back inside. The house was dim, darker than I remembered. The hoarding had worsened, though still not enough to destroy the structure. In the living room, I found Mr. Whiskers. Flies buzzed in beams of sunlight. His body had decayed into a grotesque, bloated form. Maggots writhed within. Tears stung my eyes. She had adored that cat. If she let this happen to him, something was very wrong. My hands shook as I dialed the police. They arrived quicker than expected. Officers in blue gloves combed through the house methodically. Eventually, one sat me down on the porch. She wasn't inside. They checked every space, every hidden corner. No forced entry, no signs of violence. It was as if she simply vanished. "When was the last time you spoke with her?" asked a gruff officer, whose badge read, "Mathers." "It's been a few months. I've been busy with school, and she's tough to keep in touch with sometimes." Mathers nodded thoughtfully. "Any friends or family she might be staying with?" I shook my head. Mom never kept friends close. No extended family either. It stung to realize how much I was like her. "All right," he said. "One last thing. There's something inside I need you to see." I followed him back into the house. Other officers were filing out. He led me up the stairs. They creaked underfoot. The house smelled faintly better, but the odor of dust and decay lingered. A fly buzzed past Officer Mather's face. He waved it away. Upstairs, we entered the master bedroom. Boxes and debris were shoved to one side. Her bed moved from its usual spot, lay disheveled against another wall. On the walls and ceiling, red lines and frenzied scrawls covered the surfaces. Doorway to the 9 divine blessings. Partake of the flesh, the god of Drek. Symbols twisted between the words, sharp arrows and spiraling patterns. I stared, heart sinking. She had fallen deep into delusion. On the wall where her bed once sat, a red doorway was outlined, child-sized, with arrows all pointing toward it. Oh no, I whispered. Officer Mathers pressed his palm against the outlined space. Nothing happened. No hidden door. No secret passage. I've seen cases like this before, he said quietly. Paranoid schizophrenia. Hallucinations. And hoarding, I added. He nodded grimly. You seem like you've got a good head on your shoulders, so I'll be honest. This isn't good. If we find her, she'll need treatment. How old is she? Only 50. If we find her. The words stayed with me. Mathers looked around solemnly. And I'm sorry to pile on, but legally I have to report this, he added, gesturing at the clutter. Violations of fire codes, city ordinances. You'll need to start clearing it out. I'll give you some time, but when I check back in a few days, I need to see progress, or I'll have to get the city involved. I nodded. I'll start cleaning. And I did. I rented a dumpster and stocked up on cleaning supplies. The first thing I removed was Mr. Whiskers. His body had compressed into a hard disc. A brown stain soaked the carpet beneath him. Once he was gone, the air inside improved. I caught up on overdue bills. Thankfully, the mortgage had been paid off years ago. I restored the electricity and water that same day. Then I tackled the mess. Broken furniture, yellowed newspapers dating back to the 1970s, decades of accumulated trash. By sunset, the living room was finally clear. I have a tendency to bury my grief in work. I lay back on the dusty old couch, sweat dripping from my forehead, when I heard it. A knock, coming from upstairs. I jerked awake, staring at the ceiling. Another knock, above me, heart racing. I crept upstairs, switching on lights as I went. Most bulbs were dead. A few flickered weakly. I approached the master bedroom. Knock. The letters and symbols on the walls now glowed faintly red, like deep-sea bioluminescence. And in the center of the wall, the red doorway outline had transformed. Now, a black, gaping hole yawned open. The sight made my skin crawl. It felt like the laws of reality were bending, like seeing a ghost appear in daylight, something that simply shouldn't exist. I shoved the bed with all my strength, scraping it across the floor until it slammed against the wall, blocking the hole. I backed out, pulled the door shut, and jammed a kitchen chair beneath the knob. I returned to the couch, heart hammering, trying in vain to sleep. Above me, the knocking continued. Knock, knock. I pressed my ear to the wall, hesitated, then knocked back 3 times. Knock, knock. I felt sick. I slumped deeper under the blanket, trying to concentrate on my phone. I heard the bed scraping across the floor, the wood groaning under its weight. Then came the sound of something moving on all 4s, pacing the room like a caged animal. The doorknob upstairs rattled, and I heard the hinges creak as if straining against something pressing against the door. The shuffling resumed, hands or paws slapping lightly above me. A primitive part of my mind fired a warning. Whatever was crawling around wasn't my mother. Knock. That seemed to seal it. I stayed curled on the couch for hours, teeth clenched, blanket gripped tightly. I knew it was irrational, but I had nowhere else to go. When sunlight finally cut through the filthy window, a ribbon of brightness hit my face. I woke with a start, gasping. The house was still, apart from the chirp of birds outside. The events of the night before felt unreal. I pulled on sandals and clean clothes from my suitcase. After brushing my teeth and changing out of my sweat-soaked tank top, I went upstairs. The chair remained wedged under the doorknob. I moved it aside and stepped in. The first thing I noticed, the bed had been shoved awkwardly against the wall. I remembered moving it the night before, and now the dark doorway was gone. I realized I couldn't focus on cleaning anymore. I needed answers. The blinds were drawn, but an orange glow seeped around their edges. I grabbed a staple gun and heavy, black trash bags covering the window until no light seeped through. The room darkened and a faint red glow began to fill it. Like a simmering nebula, light leaked in under the door, so I stuffed a blanket there too. A wet, sucking noise came from the wall, and the black square doorway reappeared. I wasn't imagining it. This time, a foul odor hit me, like compost rotting under a hot sun, or an abandoned latrine. I grabbed a measuring tape and approached. Being petite, I could probably crawl through if needed. I reached the threshold. The edges of the doorway rippled, folding into the darkness. Cautiously, I extended the tape measure into it. It vanished into the void, the wall shivering slightly around the yellow line. I pushed the tape forward. At 4 feet, it brushed something invisible. I kept feeding it. 6 feet, then 8. Without warning, tension yanked hard on the tape. Something had grabbed it. The tape whipped through my hands, slicing my palm. I gasped at the sudden pain. With a final jerk, the case ripped from my grasp and disappeared into the darkness. I staggered backward, bleeding. Then, the tape shot back out. There was a pause, and then, with terrifying speed, the measuring tape lashed out, slamming into the wall just inches from my head with a loud crack. I turned to see a deep gouge in the drywall. The tape measure clattered to the ground, still smoking. No words were spoken, but the message was clear. Leave. A wet gurgle sounded from the doorway, followed by frantic tapping on the walls. Panicking, I tore down the trash bags, flooding the room with sunlight. My eyes burned from the brightness. The black doorway evaporated. I wrapped my bleeding hand in a towel and found an old first aid kit to clean and bandage it. A slow, cold realization crept in. The police wouldn't find my mother. If there was any chance of saving her, it would be up to me. Anxiety tightened around my ribs. I knew this would demand more from me than I believed I had. But I had no real choice. She was my mother, my only remaining family. The decision was made. I went to the local hardware store and bought 2 high-powered construction lights. At an outdoor shop, I picked up a harness, rope, carabiners, ascenders, descenders, and a high-lumen headlamp. I pushed the supplies home in a stolen shopping cart, the sky boiling with thunderclouds overhead. The air tasted like smoke. For sale signs dotted the nearby lawns. Neighbors, sensing the wrongness, were leaving. Mist crept low across the street. I slipped into the house, closing the door behind me, the fog following briefly inside. It felt like standing on the edge of an unseen cliff, staring into an alien ocean. Upstairs, I set up the construction lights. The faint knocking from the walls continued like water dripping somewhere deep. Knock, knock, knock. The house felt alive, breathing. I turned on the bright lamps, bleaching the room in cold white light. I wasn't ready to go through the portal yet. I needed a plan first. Light seemed to disrupt the doorway. Maybe it could be used as a weapon. I rummaged through Mom's belongings. Boxes of junk, papers, magazines. Nothing helpful. Hours later, tucked between her mattress and the frame, I found a leather journal, an ink bottle, and a fountain pen. The ink smelled metallic, like blood and burnt wood. Inside, nightmarish drawings filled the pages. People flayed alive, pinned like grotesque angels, mountains of trash rising around them. The writing was fragmented, scattered with symbols I couldn't decipher. Whatever had broken Mom's mind had reshaped it into something alien. No clear answers. I shoved the journal aside and returned to preparing. In the attic, I found my father's old rabbit rifle and a box of 22 shells. Outside in the shed, I dug up a battered axe, a giant wolf trap, and a can of gasoline. The wolf trap needed oiling, but still worked once I loosened the joints. A reckless idea formed. Stupid, dangerous, but it was all I had. I glanced at the red scrawls on the wall. The god of Drek. The thing haunting this house wasn't divine. It was a parasite, a leech feeding on decay. I planned to make it bleed. Clouds thickened outside, casting a dim, orange bruised light over the world. The neighborhood looked abandoned. I worked carefully, setting the massive wolf trap near where the portal would appear. It took all my strength to set it, but finally, it clamped with a heavy metallic click. I loaded the rifle, one small cartridge at a time. I positioned the construction lights nearby but left them unplugged, ready for quick use. The gas can sat close by, a final backup plan. Outside, the swirling fog erased everything. Inside, I stapled trash bags over the windows, sealing the room in total darkness. The faint red glow returned. The portal began forming again, the wall folding inward into swirling blackness. The smell of rot filled the air. Coins rattled somewhere unseen. The walls began to vibrate. I backed away, rifle steady. The red glow pulsed, and then it emerged. Not a face, not truly. A mass of exposed nerves shaped like a face, twitching muscle and jutting bones. Hollow sockets where eyes should have been. A half-formed skull fused with something that resembled a horse's face. It pulled itself out on too many thin, broken limbs. Snap. The wolf trap slammed shut across its body. A spray of black pus splattered the floor, hissing as it touched wood. The creature shrieked, not aloud, but inside my mind, splitting my thoughts like shattering glass. It writhed violently, half in the portal, half trapped in our world. But the steel teeth of the trap held firm. It wasn't dead, but now it was vulnerable. It spasmed, trying to drag itself back through the portal, black oil-like fluid oozing from the wound. The trap bit deeper, grinding against bone and tendons. The tar-like liquid hissed and steamed on the floor. Still, the creature fought to free itself, but it was firmly caught. I grabbed the construction light's cord and dragged it forward. The creature froze, sensing what was coming. It thrashed once, violently, but the trap held. It was stuck. It was cornered. I jammed the plug into the socket. The lamps flared to life, drenching the room in a harsh flood of white light. The creature screamed, not aloud, but deep inside my chest. A psychic shriek that rattled my ribs and clattered against my teeth, vibrating straight into my bones. The portal shuddered violently. The walls buzzed with rising heat as the red runes blazed brighter. As the light struck the threshold, the portal cinched tighter, its edges quivering like a clenched jaw. The creature thrashed once, violently, a last desperate convulsion, and then the wall snapped shut. The trap groaned, straining. A wet, final grunge echoed as the thing was severed cleanly in two. The portal's rim seared shut, white hot, while the upper half of the creature collapsed to the floor. The lower half, still caught in the trap, twitched once and then slumped into a pile of glistening black sludge. The stench was overpowering, a reeking blend of wet earth, rotted meat, and something sickly sweet. It filled the room, clinging to my skin, my mouth, my lungs. The light bulb flickered and buzzed under the strain. The portal spasmed again, glitching like a broken video feed. I raised the rifle, pressed the barrel to the twitching remains of its face, and squeezed the trigger. Its head burst like an overripe fruit. Black ichor sprang across the wall. Wisps of smoke curled lazily from the barrel. My heart thundered in my chest. The twitching slowed, but didn't stop. The half-corpse sagged, leaking a thick black fluid that pooled and bubbled on the floorboards. Tiny bursts of static crackling from it. The knocking on the walls grew sharper, faster. I started to wonder if it had ever been the creature making the noise. I switched off the work lights. Slowly, the portal reformed, rippling like an open wound. And there it was again, that abyssal black, darker than anything natural, a darkness that devoured light, memory, and meaning itself. But this time it wasn't empty. The knocking grew louder, steady, deliberate. I clipped the climbing rope to my harness, double-checking the anchor tied to the bed frame. The rope thrummed faintly under my weight as I tested it. I flicked on my headlamp. Its beam cut forward and was almost immediately swallowed by the void. The portal's edges pulsed, breathing like something alive. No more hesitation. I took one final breath, thick with sweat, smoke, and the creature's lingering stench, then dropped to my knees. Static whined in my ears like nails across a record. I lowered myself forward, palms sinking into the blood-soaked carpet where the black fluid had seeped and crawled through. The temperature plunged, not cold, abyssal. It drained the heat straight from my bones. The space beyond was wrong. Angles bent where they shouldn't. Distances shifted when I looked away. I turned, expecting the bedroom behind me, but there was only tunnel. The doctor had vanished or was hiding. Ahead, a faint amber light oozed from deep within the tunnel. Shadows slanted sharply across the uneven ground. The walls pulsed, shallow breaths through living tissue. I moved forward. The knocking intensified, and then I realized it wasn't knocking anymore. It was scratching, fingernails scraping across something soft. Close, just around the bend. I crept forward, each step a prayer. The tunnel widened enough for me to crouch. Sickly amber light spilled out from somewhere deeper, staining the walls in the color of old blood. That's when I saw them, shapes embedded in the walls, fleshy lumps, some twitching, some still, sacks of meat breathing faintly like sleeping lungs. The air was wet, rancid with rot and something worse. Then I heard her voice, faint, wet. Help. It came from deeper inside. I rounded the corner, and I found her. She was fused into the far wall, her arms stretched impossibly wide, ankles twisted grotesquely. Her torso had been peeled open, spread outward, woven into the structure like grotesque wallpaper. Her head hung to one side, lips cracked and bleeding, but her eyes, glassy, familiar, locked onto mine. The sacks along the tunnel were connected to her by tendrils, dozens of them, some pulsing, some ruptured and leaking that same viscous black sludge. One of the largest sacks hung beneath her ribcage, split open like cupped hands. Something dark and wet cradled inside. She wasn't dead, and she wasn't unconscious. She was aware, trapped, bleeding into the walls, existing in a nightmare that would never end. Her fingers twitched weakly against the wall. Tap, tap, tap. Not to escape, but to warn. She had been trying to reach me, trying to pull me in, or maybe trying to keep something else from getting out. Movement shifted behind her, deep within the shadows. A low, wet groan vibrated through the floor and into my teeth. I froze. She wasn't alone in here, and neither was I. From the fleshy walls, a figure slithered free, thin, low to the ground, gliding rather than walking. Its head jerked sharply from side to side, sniffing the air with a pulsing, snout-like appendage. Where a nose should have been, another shape followed, and another. Glints caught in my headlamp beam, eyes, slits of reflected light, dozens of them, crawling from every crack and fold in the tunnel walls. Some scuttled on too many legs, others stretched tall and grotesque, like waterlogged skeletons. They weren't moving toward her. They were moving toward me. I ran. The rifle slipped onto my back as I stumbled toward her. Her eyes never left mine. Her mouth opened, cracked and bleeding, and she whispered, "Ended. For the love of God." I dropped the gas can, fumbling for the rag in my pocket. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost spilled the matches too. I jammed the rag into the can's mouth and struck a match. The flame caught instantly. The creatures noticed. Their movements changed. No more slow stalking. They charged. Tears blurred my vision as I stepped back. Her gaze remained steady. Not angry, just pleading. "I'm sorry," I whispered. She blinked once, slowly. I threw the can. It splashed against the wall beneath her, soaking everything in gasoline. The burning rag sizzled against the wet surface, then ignited with a low, muffled whoomp. The heat slammed into me, stealing the air from my lungs. Fire raced up the walls, caught the pulsing sacks, and split them open like overripe fruit. Black fluid hissed and fed the flames higher. The tunnel screamed, a deep, wet, agonized howl that shuddered through the very walls. The sacks ruptured one after another, spraying more fuel into the growing inferno. The light flickered wildly across the uneven surfaces. Shapes convulsed in the distance, writhing in the flames. Some melted against the burning walls. Others tried to flee, dragging themselves desperately along the fleshy ground. I turned and ran. The tunnel tightened around me, contracting like a closing throat. The air grew heavier, hotter, smothering. The static in my ears roared until it felt like my skull would burst. My headlamp flickered but held. I spotted the rope ahead, my only way back. The creatures were behind me now. I could hear the slap of their limbs against the burning floor, gaining fast. The roar of the fire drowned out everything. I reached the rope, slipping against the hot, slick nylon. I grabbed it, wound it around my wrist, and pulled myself upward. Below, the world burned. I didn't look back. My boots slid against the blood-slick walls. My injured palm screamed with every grip. Still, I climbed, dragging myself away from the collapse below. The portal shrank, curling inward, burning itself out. The rope lurched sharply once, something heavy striking it from below. I didn't stop. I climbed faster, lungs and heart threatening to give out. At the last moment, I heaved through the threshold. I slammed onto the bedroom floor, skin scraping against the boards. Smoke poured from the collapsing portal, thick and choking. The glowing runes flickered and dimmed into dying embers. The portal shrank into nothing, leaving behind a scorched, cracked patch of drywall. The remains of the trapped creature melted into a viscous black slurry, hissing as it spread across the floor. It smelled of burned oil and rotten fruit. The house fell silent, except for the faint creak of settling wood and the last crackles of dying fire. I didn't move. I lay there, coated in sweat, soot, and blood, staring at the ceiling. I was alive, but I had failed her, even though she had begged me to, even though it was the only mercy left. I sat up slowly, trembling. The air stank of smoke and blood. I peeled the gauze from my palm, wincing at the angry wound beneath. I pressed the bandage back down and forced myself upright. The bedroom was gutted. Blackened fingerprints stained the walls. The once bright comforter was matted with soot. The wood under the burned-out portal crackled as it cooled. I stumbled downstairs. The living room was a wreck of half-packed boxes and scattered junk. The front door hung ajar, letting in slow, lazy tendrils of morning fog. The sky was a dull, flat gray, the color of old bones. I leaned against the wall, my chest heaving. It was over. I had destroyed the portal. I had burned away the nightmare rooted in this house. I had freed her in the only way I could. So why did it feel like I had only uncovered the first layer of something deeper? I closed the door and bolted it, but the act felt meaningless. No lock could stop what I had seen. No door could keep it out. No prayer could silence it. I drifted through the house, a stranger in my own childhood home. Every piece of furniture, every shadowed corner felt wrong now, corrupted by proximity. I had grown up here, laughed here, lived here. Now, it all felt poisoned, stained beyond repair. And in that broken silence, a thought crawled into my mind. What if the fire wasn't enough to end her suffering? Someone else is here. I first noticed something was off when I picked up my keys. I've had the same keychain since college. An old bottle opener from a bar I don't even remember. I've never swapped it out. It's worn smooth from years, in my pocket, with the logo nearly gone. But one morning last month, when I grabbed them off the counter, something felt wrong. The keys looked the same, but they didn't feel right. The weight was all wrong, like someone had replaced my real keys with copies. One of the teeth on my apartment key was shorter, slightly rounded, but when I tested them, everything worked fine. The door opened, the mailbox unlocked. I told myself I was probably imagining it. Maybe I dropped them or bent something by accident. That's how it begins, though. Small enough that you write it off as stress. Work had been tough, and I hadn't been sleeping well. So I pushed it aside. Then the email arrived. It was a receipt from a coffee shop I've never been to, some indie place across town. The charge hit my card at 8:42 a.m. I checked my phone's health app, and at that exact time, I was in the shower. I remember being in the shower, but the receipt had my name, my card. Everything matched. I Googled the cafe. They had an online ordering system where you could leave a note for the barista. Mine said, "See you tomorrow." After that, I started checking my accounts more frequently. More strange purchases started showing up. A small charge at a gas station I've never visited. A subscription to a language learning app. Someone ordered sushi at 11 p.m. on a Sunday. Something I never do. The strange part, they ordered something close to what I might order. Not exactly my usual, but still something I wouldn't mind. At first, I thought maybe my card was stolen. But why were the purchases so subtle? Too minor to notice unless I was paying close attention. Then, my coworker asked me about the concert. "What concert?" I replied, confused. She laughed. "The one you posted about on your story. It looked amazing." I don't post stories. In fact, I barely post anything at all. I opened my account, nothing there. But when I checked my camera roll, there were pictures. Low-quality shots from the back of a crowd. A band I sort of like. Someone had zoomed in, capturing the lights, the stage, the crowd. The timestamps matched exactly what my coworker had said. The only problem, I wasn't there. That's when I started to lose it. I wondered if I'd been sleepwalking or dissociating. Maybe I was blacking out due to stress. So I did what anyone would do. I set up a camera in my bedroom, just a cheap webcam, motion-triggered, to ease my mind. The next morning I watched the footage. I never left the bed, but at 3:12 a.m. I sat up, perfectly straight, rigid. I just stared at the bedroom door. Then, without blinking, I spoke. "You need to stop watching me." It was my voice, my face, but it didn't feel like me. I stole a ring from my dying mother, and something followed me home. It was just a simple ring, nothing remarkable about it. No diamonds, no engravings, just a few specks of rust scattered across the band. It was designed to fit a thin, bony finger, something that would belong to a fragile, fading hand. I knew it wouldn't fit me, that it would end up at the bottom of a box under my bed, but I had to take it. I wanted to sleep that night knowing I had it, that it was mine. I envisioned years passing by, watching the rust spread, turning the ring into a dark bronze, sharp to the touch. I wanted to possess it long after the woman it belonged to was gone, when her body had returned to the earth. When I was 11, my dad left my mom. He left while I was at school and she was at work. So, while mom was teaching grammar and I was struggling with algebra, dad packed up everything we owned. He always had this my money mentality. He made a lot, so he thought everything should be his. And when he left, he took it all. I mean everything. 3 moving vans worth. He took the TV, Mom's favorite pots and pans, photo albums, everything, even the ones that didn't seem to matter, like the ones of her late grandmother. Furniture, sofas, dining tables. He took it all, leaving us with nothing but empty floors and a locked door behind him. I can still picture Mom's face when we came home, the moment she realized how empty the house was. She dropped to her knees in a way that seemed almost theatrical, burying her head in my shoulder. And through my anger, I couldn't help but wonder what Dad must have felt. How powerful, like a king, driving away with everything that had made us a family, starting a new life. I hated him, but I knew he must have felt invincible. We moved in with my Nan, and a week later, I took my first item. It was a pen from my teacher's desk, nothing special, just a plastic ballpoint. I kept it in a shoebox under my bed next to my granddad's old comic books. That shoebox is still there, and I still have that pen. It's the first item in my collection of 6119. It now shares a space with item 23, the right arm of a wrestling figurine from my cousin Joe, and item 186, a teen magazine I stole from a dentist's waiting room. The ring was going to be my 620th item, my new prized possession, for a while at least. The truth is, the ring had belonged to my mom. When Dad cleared the house, he took everything, but he couldn't take the jewelry she was wearing. The bracelet, the earrings, the wedding ring. He couldn't take any of them, and he couldn't take item 620 either. The ring had been a gift from her father, something he brought back from the Vietnam War. He never told her where it came from, only that it was hers now, and she was to treasure it forever. As a child, she wore it on her finger. As an adult, it was worn on a chain around her neck. When she started treatment, it returned to her finger again. I remember that first night, after Dad left, before we went to Nan's. We sat on air beds in the living room, and Mom took the ring off her necklace to show me. It was still dull gray, not rusty yet. She even let me hold it. Granddad said I had to keep this ring, Mom told me, because it was a part of him. Granddad always says weird stuff, I replied. The ring fit my index finger back then, sliding down until it rested against my knuckle. I think he was telling the truth, Jamie, she said, gently taking the ring off my finger. It was dark, but I could still see her eyes, full of tears. I took the ring on Mom's last night. She was a thin, frail wreck, a skeleton wrapped in a hospital gown, her gray hair soaked with the sweat, a tube sticking from her nose, the sound of her labored breathing mixed with the beep of the ECG machine. I'm not proud of what I did, but I still want to say I'm a good son. While she slept, I took the ring off her finger just like she had once taken it off mine. I tucked it into my pocket, but I held her hand. I sang hymns to her, told her stories about our life together, about Jeff, my stepdad. I kissed her cheek and told her how much I loved her. I thanked her for staying with me after Dad left, for not giving up on me when I was expelled from school, for always being there when I went to prison, for the beautiful letters she wrote me. When her breathing became faint and the ECG flatlined, I stayed with her, unwilling to let her go. She was the one thing I couldn't add to my collection, the one thing I couldn't hold on to, but I stayed with her until there was nothing left. It took the touch of a young girl to pull me away. I thought she was a nurse, but I only saw her small, dirt-covered hands. There was something oddly familiar about her. Her hands were strong as she pried me from Mom's grip. Then the room filled with nurses and doctors, and the girl ran out of the room. I saw her hair, tangled with leaves and twigs before she disappeared. On the drive home, I took the ring from my pocket and rested it on my lap. I remembered what Mom had said. Granddad said I had to keep this ring because it was a part of him, and for a moment, I almost thought I saw him, tall and old, standing behind her, his hand on her shoulder. That night, I placed the ring in the shoebox next to item 1 and added it to my collection. I need to emphasize, though I've said it several times, that something important happened that night. I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, listening to my thoughts. Above that shoebox, knowing the ring was below me. As the sun rose, casting a pink light across my room, I got out of bed and retrieved the shoebox. I opened it slowly. I saw item 1, item 186, item 329, a doorknob, item 444, a birthday candle. But there was no sign of item 620. I dumped everything out and frantically searched. I started to panic. Maybe I had put it in the wrong box. No. I checked them all, 12 other rings, but none were Mom's. I even checked the pocket of my jeans. Only my car keys. The ring was gone. I scoured my bedroom, the kitchen, under the sofas, the car, even drove back to the hospital. The ring was nowhere to be found. Something inside me felt a deep, gnawing dread. I knew I had placed the ring in that box. I remembered the moment clearly, and I had lain above it all night, knowing it was beneath me. I had never lost anything from my collection before, but now, the most important item was missing. So where had it gone? I finally managed to sleep that night after a long day of searching and phone calls from Mom's friends, Jeff's daughter Maria, and the funeral preparations. I didn't sleep well. I dreamt I was hiding in tall grass, heart racing, covered in dirt and sweat. Gunfire echoed in the distance, and I could hear people screaming. I woke to the sound of my bedroom door creaking closed. The room was dark, and though the window was open, the door had gently shut on its own. Unable to sleep, I got up and opened the curtains. Moonlight bathed the room, and I saw my desk. The shoebox was there, its lid off. Item 1, item 186, item 329, and item 444 were all there. And there, beside the pen, was item 620, the ring, exactly where I had left it. Someone had put it there. Another day passed, filled with the motions of grief, talking to the priest, visiting the crematorium, handling phone calls. Everything felt hollow. I did what I had to do because I had to keep living. Mom couldn't keep going, but I had no choice. And as I went through the motions, I couldn't shake the thought, why was anyone else allowed to keep living when Mom was gone? I left the shoebox on my bedroom desk, lit off. Between everything else, I checked on item 620 whenever I had the chance. I imagined how my dad must have felt, driving away with a van full of everything that had mattered to my mom. I was relieved he hadn't taken this from her. That night I returned to the long grass. My heart raced, my clothes stuck to me, dirt clung to my skin, and gunshots echoed in the distance. Screams filled the air, and I was holding a gun, an assault rifle. My hands trembled, but my finger was on the trigger. Then I heard it. Footsteps. At first distant, but then they grew closer, closer, until the door creaked shut, and I woke up to darkness. I knew I was alone, knew my bedroom was empty, but I also knew the ring wouldn't be in the shoebox anymore. I was too scared to turn on the light, so I waited for the sun. When it rose, I found item 620 at the foot of my bed, resting on a blanket. It was rustier than before, with new red spots spreading over the gray surface. Another day passed. I returned item 620 to the shoebox. I made breakfast, ate half, and threw the rest away. I picked hymns for Mom's funeral. Her favorite was How Great Thou Art. Asked her best friend to make sandwiches and answered countless phone calls. I learned how to respond to I'm so sorry without wanting to snap at them. But Cousin Joe didn't call, even though he had said he would. I tried calling him, but it went straight to voicemail. I sent him texts, even a childhood photo to try and get a response. But nothing. I messaged him on WhatsApp, saw that he had read it, but he didn't reply. Honestly, that pissed me off. I had reached out when his mom passed, so I tried calling Maria. Nothing. At the lowest point in my life, they had both abandoned me. I drank too much that night, sat in my deck chair, waiting for the sun to set, and then I saw her, just for a second, for the briefest moment. She stood in the middle of the lawn, perfectly still, a little girl, mud-covered, twigs tangled in her hair, blood on her hands. She wore a shirt made of straw, with a red stain on her stomach. No shoes. She looked straight at me, the same girl from the waiting room, and then she was gone. I won't lie, I was terrified. I tried calling Joe and Maria again. No response. So I locked the door, checked it multiple times, and went to bed with a knife within reach. I didn't want to sleep, but exhaustion took over. I knew what I was about to dream. Suddenly, I was back in the grass. My heart pounded, gunfire surrounded me, and I held that assault rifle. Footsteps, closer, closer, so I pulled the trigger and I felt a weight on my chest, an unbearable pressure. I was lying on my back, still in that dream. I could feel hot breath on my face, like something was hovering above me. The weight on my chest was so intense I thought my ribs might break. Then, silence. The weight lifted and I could breathe again. The door creaked closed. The room was empty. I moved my arm just to check I was still alive. Then I reached where I'd felt the weight, and I found it. Item 620. It was resting on my chest, right above my heart. I considered calling the police, but I couldn't. Not because it was unreasonable, but because of my collection. I didn't want them to take it from me. Still, I was scared. I spent the rest of the night wide awake, watching movies, clutching my knife, hoping it was over, wishing I could go back to that moment in the hospital when I took the ring from Mom's finger and stole her father from her. The next morning, I placed item 620 back in the shoebox. No word from Joe or Maria. Instead, I heard from Helena. I hadn't known she existed until the phone rang. She was in her 50s, married to my dad, and had known about me for almost 10 years. She called to tell me the bad news. Helena explained that she and my dad had been watching a movie when he complained of a pressure on his chest. He tried to move, but he couldn't. When he stopped breathing, Helena performed CPR for 35 minutes until help arrived. But my dad died in her bed of a major heart attack. The king of our house, the moneymaker, the one who tore our lives apart, was finally gone. I thanked Helena for calling, and she told me I was welcome to attend the funeral, as long as I didn't cause any trouble. That seemed fair. I didn't want to mourn him, not with Mom's death so fresh, not after everything he'd done to us. Not while Joe and Maria refused to pick up their phones, and not while that ring sat in my home, something I was too afraid to get rid of. But I did mourn him, because just as Dad had left Mom with her jewelry, he had left me with something I'd always carry, his absence. And now, even that was gone. I saw the young girl 3 times that day. First, when I hung up after talking to Helena, she was staring at me through the window, her bloodied hands pressed against the glass. Then, in the bathroom mirror, over my shoulder as I brushed my teeth. By this point, I had accepted her, accepted that I deserved this. So when I saw her in the corner of my bedroom, as I prepared to sleep, I simply wished her good night. Then, I was back in the long grass, finger on the trigger, and the world was filled with smoke and fire. I heard her scream. One long scream, followed by the thud of a body hitting the ground. Twigs and leaves were in her hair, and she wore the shirt made of straw. It shouldn't have been her. She wasn't supposed to have been there. And there was nothing I could do to fix it, nothing to stop the wound that was oozing. She was still breathing, but silent now. She lifted her right hand, and I saw the ring. It was a little too big for her. She slid it off, muttered something I couldn't understand, and handed it to me. It was covered in blood. I rubbed it against my shirt and whispered, "Sorry, so sorry. This shouldn't have happened." Then, a creak. The door closed, but the room wasn't empty. I left the curtains open, and moonlight filled the room. I couldn't see anything, but I knew he was there. A moment of silence, and then I heard heavy footsteps. Closer, closer. I couldn't move, couldn't do anything, but I could hear him coming. Then, through the darkness, I saw piercing white eyes like my mom's when we sat on those airbeds, but these eyes were tearless, cold, unblinking. The figure came closer. It was my granddad. His face was pale, thin, his lips peeling, and he was wearing a helmet. He held something in his hand, the ring. I wanted to fight, to run, to do anything, but I still couldn't breathe. And now, I could feel his hand on my chest, his breath on my face. His eyes stared into mine, nothing but emptiness. Then, suddenly I could move again, but I wasn't in control. My hand lifted, and he took it. I was back in the long grass, alone, covered in dirt and blood, the gun at my feet, the ring in my hand. I tried to put it on, but it didn't fit. So, I put it in my pocket. I whispered, "I'm so sorry." This morning, I woke up with the sun for the first time in a while. But when I looked at my hand, I saw dried blood, pain shooting through my fingers. The ring had been forced onto my index finger, painfully pushed all the way down to my knuckle. I tried calling Joe, Maria, and even Helena, but there was no answer. I went to the hospital, half expecting to see the young girl again, but she wasn't there today. Mom's funeral is tomorrow. I don't want to sleep. I don't want to return to those dreams. I don't want to go back to the long grass. I don't want to feel his breath on my face or his hand on my chest. I wish I could give Mom her ring back. That ring belonged to him, but I don't want to keep him.